Good afternoon. Welcome to BSidesSF 2025. Right next to me, I have one of our headliners. Yes, Evan Johnson. Do you know which one? There's like 25 of them. The right one. I like that answer. He actually has a very interesting topic today. I love it. Radical results. A security org's version of radical candor. Okay, so right behind me, there's going to be a huge QR code. There's something called Slido. You can participate, give feedback, ask questions mainly. I will read the questions aloud if time permits, and Mr. Johnson will answer them. Now, at the end, if we run out of time for all the questions, sometimes there's a plethora of them, he's actually willing to meet you at his booth, right?
Yep.
Which one?
We have a booth on the 4th floor, the Run Reveal booth.
Yes, he's the CEO and co-founder of the company, just saying. So he's going to make himself available on the 4th floor at his booth if we run out of time for questions or just to connect with him. All right, there's the QR code. Did everybody get it? Anybody still need it? Are we good? All right. Mr. Evan Johnson, please take it away.
Thank you all for coming. Thanks to all the organizers. This is always the best conference of the year. I don't know of any other conference where you get to be in IMAX, literally on a 50-foot screen. So this is always the coolest conference of the year. My talk is called Radical Results, a security org's version of radical candor. And by itself, that title is a little wacky. It doesn't really say a whole lot. It's kind of interesting, but we're going to really dive into it. And I promise by the time you leave today, you'll have a pretty interesting new framework that you can apply to anything that your security team does and help you kind of think about the way that you're perceived at your company. So my name's Evan Johnson. I'm a security engineer first. I was the first security engineer at Cloudflare and at Segment in a past life. I am at EJCX_ on Twitter. Make sure you follow that. I'm a security leader. I write a lot of Golang. I love Diet Pepsi, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Run Reveal. Run Reveal is helping every company solve their security logging problems, whatever they may be, from collection to storage to insights and fancy AI stuff on top of it. But that's not what this is about. This is about, what is this talk? So, show of hands, who's read the book Radical Candor? Anybody? Okay, about 50%. That's pretty good. I won't bury the lead on what this talk is about. Otherwise, it'd be too confusing. But the idea is that I took some of the ideas from Radical Candor and I morphed them into something that you could apply on a team basis. So for an entire team, you can kind of use this whole new framework. And then I'm giving you guys a framework and some tooling that you can use to kind of see how to apply the framework itself. The idea is meant to be gauging your team's effectiveness and how you're perceived at a company. And so the agenda is I'm going to do a recap on Radical Candor. I think I usually hit some notes that people, different notes from the book that other people may not remember. I'm going to go over the quadrant system from the book because that's the whole point. And then I'm going to repurpose that quadrant system and then help you apply it. So by the time this talk is done in 25 minutes, we'll have done all of those 4 things. Okay. Recapping Radical Candor. That's actually less blurry than I would have expected the cover to be when you blow it up to be 50 feet tall. Okay, so what is Radical Candor? If you have ever had a manager or a mentor, or you became a manager for the first time, or got a promotion at work, likely somebody's mentioned this book to you at some point. So the book is written by a woman named Kim Scott, who is an executive at a bunch of really top-tier Silicon Valley, San Francisco kind of companies that were astronomically successful. So there's anecdotes in it from like her interactions with Sheryl Sandberg to her time at Google, all sorts of stuff. And I think that the good parts of it is it's really entertaining because it kind of humanizes these people who you read about in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal or whatever, and in a way that you probably haven't seen them before with these anecdotes. But it's also like some of the anecdotes are really, really good, but also like it's not going to change your life. Like I put the mid here because nothing in it. You'll read the book cover to cover, and then you'll be like, that was all obvious, but it was kind of useful having it stated, even though it was kind of obvious. And the biggest thing that stuck with me from the book, and it's kind of the whole central point of her writing the book, I think, is that she created this quadrant system. And the quadrant system is meant for you to be able to have a tough conversation with somebody that you work with, or I guess technically you could do it with like somebody you're in a relationship, your partner, something like that. But I don't recommend using it in that situation. But the idea is that on one axis of this quadrant system, you have care personally, which means in this tough conversation, did I care personally about the other person? And on the other quadrant, you have challenge directly, where when things are going right or wrong, you're able to give real feedback, and you're able to right the ship or help them understand the way that you feel. Or in a lot of her situations, she's a manager and she's trying to do performance management with somebody that she's managing, or she's being managed by her manager and that person's giving her feedback. And she talks about like where on the kind of Cartesian plane that conversation ended up. So a few points about this quadrant system. It's kind of like the Magic Quadrant and Gartner, but for interpersonal relationships with your boss or somebody you're managing. But you want to be in the top right, and that means you've been radically candid, and that's where the title of the book comes from. She says in the book that if you can't be in the top right, you want to be in the bottom right, which is sometimes you're a little bit of a jerk, but you are real about it. And that's, you want to optimize for the top right, but she says realistically, you won't be there every time you interact with somebody in a tough conversation. And so you want to optimize for being real, and you want to be in that top right, but if you can't be, obnoxious aggression is sometimes where you end up. She has a specific story from an interaction she had with Sheryl Sandberg that was pretty funny in the book, where she says Sheryl Sandberg gave her the feedback that she says a lot in this really important meeting with Larry Page and Sergey Brin. She says, you say every 3 words. I think you should get coaching. And she says, no, it's okay. I've given a lot of presentations. It's fine. And then Sheryl Sandberg says, no, I really think that you should get coaching on this topic because you say a lot and it can be a problem. And she says, oh, thanks, but no thanks. And then finally Sheryl Sandberg says, you sound dumb when you say every 3 words, and you need to get coaching. I can tell that this is something that I have to be a little more stern with for you to hear the feedback. And in that case, she dipped into the obnoxious aggression kind of quadrant. She was trying to be radically candid. She gave the feedback that she needed to give her. And who knows if it was good feedback or not. I didn't see her saying a lot. But it's a funny story. Another one is that she gives is the Bob story from the book that's kind of famous, where Bob is somebody who works for her, and maybe I don't get all the specifics right here, but she cares personally a bunch about Bob, very nice to him. He's not performing well. And so she goes a whole year never giving Bob the feedback that you're not performing and you need to be. I think his performance is pretty inconsistent, and she ends up firing Bob. And at the end of the year, Bob says, why didn't you say something? And she doesn't know the answer. She realizes she was in this ruinous empathy quadrant, and could have been better if she just gave Bob the feedback that you're not performing and you need to work on that. And then the last quadrant is manipulative insincerity, and I think that's the quadrant you never want to be in. That's like your backstabbing coworker, or super political situations that you're in that aren't fun to be in. It happens from time to time, and you want to avoid being in that quadrant. So that's the general idea of the way the book presents this framework that I always found very useful. So I don't remember all the anecdotes or all of the lessons that she gave, but I always thought after years went by of reading this book, I would sometimes have a tough conversation with somebody and leave it and think, okay, where on the Cartesian plane was I? And sometimes I did a good job where I felt like I was, this is totally fabricated dots. I just put a bunch of dots up here. But sometimes I did a good job and felt like I was radically candid. And other times, maybe I was a bit of a jerk. Sometimes maybe I just like checked out and didn't care enough to give the feedback that maybe I should have. And I was in the ruinous empathy quadrant. But the kind of mental tooling of being able to just plot, how did I do there, was always something very useful to me. And it's about at this moment that you might be wondering, what does any of this have to do with my security team? Well, I kept using this for like management reasons where I would think about this thing, but then I also started to think about my team's performance like this. And I was managing kind of a big team with managers and managers of managers, and it was a lot going on and lots of projects and people performing well, people not performing well, all sorts of situations like that coming up. But I was generally wondering, like, how are we doing as a team when you think about how we're doing as a whole at the whole company? So we're doing tons of stuff, working with all sorts of different teams at the company, so from finance to IT to engineering, and I would sometimes, I didn't really have in my mind what the X and the Y axis were, but I knew like top right was good, and then was I in the top right quadrant, or was the team not? So after some time, I finally put together my own quadrant system. And to understand the quadrant system that I put together, I think that this might come across a little bit like a rant, but there's a few truths about being on a security team. I think one of the biggest sins you can commit as a security engineer or a security leader is you show up to a company and you just repeat what you've seen that works before. I think all of us do this to some degree because we do the things that are comfortable, and we did something once and it worked, and so we want to do it again because it worked once. Why wouldn't it work again? But your approach to security will depend on the organization you're in. So like a bank security team looks completely different from a startup's, and that makes sense. I think another thing that might not be, fun for us all to think about is on a day-to-day basis, it's not us protecting our companies from being on the front lines of the New York Times or preventing these massive data breaches or whatever. We can work, do everything right, and we still end up there. We can do everything wrong, not end up there. So there is correlation. You do the right things security-wise, you can prevent stuff. But I don't think that we're, the sole reason why an org is or isn't like successful security-wise. And then last is, I don't really think a lot of what we do as on a security team is very measurable. I think that when you get down to looking at the way like a sales team has a number to hit every quarter, and it's like very measurable. An engineering team, are you shipping product or are you not? Finance team, they're trying to adhere to like GAAP standards or whatever the finance team does. I don't know. But the security team, one team might have a red team and be super focused on one thing. One security org might have a completely different take on things. And it's very difficult to measure one versus the other or the outcome of anything that we do. And I think that's the truth. You might disagree, but would love to hear about it at the Run Reveal booth on the 4th floor after the talk. So when I finally put together the quadrant system, the very first axis on my Cartesian plane was vibes, because it's 2025, and vibes is close enough. But I think if you don't want to call it vibes, it's collaboration, your ability to collaborate with others at the company. So how collaborative you are, and is that culturally the right fit for your company? So I have a great real example from a CISO friend of mine that we got beers a few weeks ago, and he told me that he needs to get his team to say no more. And I think that this is like B-Sides has like the whole shift left movement, BSidesSF, especially at tech companies. It's very much like yes, but is always the attitude here. And he's saying, I need to get my team to say no a lot more, not just a little more. He had hired a really great team that was super effective, but the issue was the company culture is very cut and dry and very strict, where a team will come out and say, this is the way it's going to be. They lay down the law, and their team was too nice and kind of getting shoved around a little bit. And so he recognized that like the vibes of his team, despite them being super good at their jobs, were not fitting in with the company, and he had to fix that. And I think that that's such a fantastic example of like understanding what you're doing and whether the vibes are directionally right or not. And I mentioned shift left. I really think that shift left caught on to prominence because like the whole world embraces Silicon Valley, like like move fast and break things mantra. And that's like a survival mechanism for security is, oh, we're going to shift left, try to be as the smallest bit of a problem as we can, tack onto the systems and processes that engineering wants to do, and everything will be great. And I think that's largely true. It's not to throw stones at shift left, but I think that that's where it came from is a reaction to company culture. The other axis I put as effectiveness. I didn't know a better word, but your ability to manage risk effectively, like the thing that we actually are supposed to be doing, has to be one of the axes. Maybe I should have figured that out before I gave the talk, but it's got to be one of the axes. So I think that there's a bunch of things that go into this, but the biggest thing that I'd say is tacking on to like the Silicon Valley mantra of move fast and break things is one of the beliefs that I have is you have to be not a clipboard holding security team. You have to get in the action. You have to own and manage certain risks and projects that you want to see completed. And that goes such a long way into showing that your team is effective, in addition to like, the day in, day out of yes, but, or no, or this or that. So I think that the vibes one is a little interesting, but effective, I feel like, is almost obvious that that's the reason that they hire a security team to begin with, to manage risk. And so you have to be doing that effectively and then communicating that on a way that makes sense to other people. So if you go to ejcx.dev/radical results, it's a little difficult to see, especially when it's nearly a mile in the air. But I guess I vibe coded this like Cartesian plane where you can plot your own things and projects that you've done in the past year or two, give yourself a score, think about how you've done, and just it's supposed to be a tool that you can say, are the vibes right with my security team? Are we being effective? And I've got some real life examples that from my past that I'll go through in a moment. But one of the things that I think is really important with all of this is like the idea that more dots is probably better. So if you are managing a team and you're really slow at shipping things, like you should have as many dots on the board as other organizations. And so I think that if you're trying to like be perfect with everything you do, optimizing for more dots is a great way to get the vibes right and your effectiveness right, because you're making lots of small steps and like always doing things. What's the X meme right now? You can just do things. I think that yeah, you can just do things. One thing that is, I don't know if it's a flaw with my kind of model here, but vibes does affect effectiveness. Like I've seen really bad situations between certain teams at a company where like the security org just doesn't get along with whoever else, and that can be hard to fix. But the reality is you kind of can't let that get in the way of your job on the security team. You have to work through it, but it can really impact your ability. If you like don't fit in culture-wise with the rest of the company, it can really slow you down and make it impossible to do things. I've got a real-life example of this. So let's go to here. Real-life example from my past. Some people in this room were part of both of these examples, so they can gut check on how real these are. But at past job, we rolled out WebAuthn to the entire company. We were early on the kind of hype cycle. I guess it's not trendy, but it's very important. It's still not really caught on the way I guess I would have thought it would, but a lot of companies have gone full WebAuthn everywhere, full YubiKey. And we were pretty early at doing that at my past job. And one thing that I wish, when I got to the end of the project and we were all like congratulating ourselves, giving each other pats on the back, we were like, that was great. Probably like 6 months went by and I was thinking about it and I was like, we should have done that like 10 times faster. And the reason was the way we went about it. We had, the effectiveness, super great security control, WebAuthn everywhere. Nobody will debate that. It's great. The vibe at the company, though, and the company culture was that of super fast. Correctness was secondary to speed. And what we should have done was, instead of, the way that we rolled it out was, we started with one group of people, and then we waited 3 months, and we were like, I wonder if anything will break. And then after a couple, we were pretty sure that like people would run into major issues on their cell phones, logging into things, on like different weird applications, like you turn it on for like Salesforce or something, and like, will the IDP initiated flow handle WebAuthn the same way that the app initiated SAML flow will work? And we thought there'd be like tons of weird bugs. Ended up there was maybe one bug in the entire rollout for like a multi-thousand person company. And so we turned it on for one group, waited a while, turned it on for another group, waited a while, and the whole thing dragged on for like 6 months until finally we were under an actual attack and we got a call 6 months into this project and from the CEO, and he said, turn it on now, I'm tired of waiting. And like that should have been the red flag immediately, that we should have done this way faster, but it took us a while to really figure that out. And we could have just said up front, hey, we're going to turn this on now. It might break some stuff. Let us know. It's making us way more secure. Here's a sticker for everything. Like if we broke something, like here's a sticker, you found a bug. That's great. You're making us way more secure. Thank you for finding it. And we could have just done it in a week if we had done that. And so I really wish that we had gone faster. So if you use my Cartesian plane of where I would plot that, originally I would have put that like, maybe a 2 and a 2 out of 5, where it was like, yeah, that was the good quadrant, the radical results quadrant. But after further review, I think it was like probably a 2 on the effectiveness, maybe higher on the effectiveness, maybe like a 2-4, and then effectiveness I think stays as a 4, but results-wise, I got to give it right on the edge between, maybe even slightly in the bad vibes quadrant. This is another one from a past job where almost the exact same story. We get a compliance requirement. All laptops need to be managed, including Linux ones. Many people have gone through this. Few have survived. So we put together a focus group of like, let's get the like kind of engineers with the strongest opinions in the same room and have them hash it out. And then over a period of time, we'll work on managing those Linux laptops. That group is gonna pick the type, the distro, a bunch of things about it. So that's where we went wrong. What we should have done is gotten them all in a room for an hour and then said thank you for the feedback, and then just shipped something and said, we're sorry, this is not going to be perfect. You're going to hate it probably, but it's something that we have to do. And this would have saved us a ton of headache, because instead we had this like focus group that went on for forever as we made a bunch of decisions and worked through problems. And the outcome was equally effective both ways, but it like hurt relationships with other parts of the company. And we could have just, blamed the compliance obligation instead. and it would have gone a lot better. So in my company, in a past life, speed was more important than, I think effectiveness was very important, but speed was more important than people's feelings, and like we didn't really always account for that. Build versus buy, I think, is inextricably tied to your company culture, whether engineers are cheaper than actual budget. But I'm running out of time, and I think that all of us can, I'll go to conclusion, my conclusion slide, all of us can really benefit from taking a look at the things that we do over a quarter-to-quarter basis over the past year and just plotting where we think it was. How was it received by different groups? You can plot how other executives, if you're the CISO, how other executives perceived it, how the engineers who were on the receiving end of it thought about it. And then you can also plot like how many things that we did really move the needle in terms of managing risk. And I think that like it's an incredibly simple tool, just plotting on a Cartesian plane how to go. But it's something that we almost never do, and super helpful. So I'd also say that the truth is like gray. So you might have one opinion and it might change over time, like you heard that mine did. So I think every audience, like I was saying, will have a different opinion on how certain things went. But it's just a tool. It's not any magic thing. And then last, I think it's very important to optimize for more dots on the plot. I think that's almost universally true, except in some very different company cultures that I've never worked in. Maybe the most conservative banks where you only get to measure 10 times and cut once. So, but I've never worked at a bank, so I wouldn't know. But I think that by and large, like optimizing for more dots on a plot is way better. More dots on the graph. Questions?
All right, we'll open it up. You do have some, sir.
I have questions. Great.
You have questions. You have a plethora of them. I'm loving it.
I never would have expected.
You're fancy, huh? All right. Are there any other books you would recommend for learning how to create an effective team with good vibes?
Truthfully, I'm not a big reader. Radical Candor was good. What's the one with the blue cover? There's one with a blue cover that is. Oh, there's a Manager's Path. That's a good one as well.
The Manager's Path.
But also, like, there's no, there's no better learning experience than just by doing. And so, read that, and then the Mike Tyson quote: "Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face." Like it'll be a learning experience once you're actually doing it.
Having a good vibe may affect efficiency of current project, but may help you with collaboration with other teams on future projects. Any suggestions on how to draw the line there?
Can you say that one more time, or can I read it?
Yes, both.
Which one?
This one.
Having a good vibe may affect efficiency of current project, but may help you with collaboration with other teams on future. I actually think good vibes only helps ever, because like if you do something and you make friends, those people are going to want to work with you in the future and support like the next security initiative that you have. So it only pays dividends to like have, good vibes, good collaboration with others. And then last is using Radical Candor, couldn't the company that needs more no's focus on its hiring practice to make sure they are hiring individuals that can reflect the core values they truly want? I think you're absolutely right, but I don't think that that's how it generally works. A lot of times you hire a CISO who the first thing they need to do is hire a bunch of people because something bad happened and there's a lot of budget. And so like the reality is when push comes to shove, you do a lot of hiring quite quickly sometimes, and you may not fully understand like how to express the company values and the hiring practices that you have. And so I think that it can be hard, but yes, you're absolutely right. Last, do you think most security teams index higher on vibes or effectiveness? Where do most teams need to focus? I think that security does a good job. I would say like you've got, based on the last few years in security, you've got a lot of people talking about making security more inclusive, making security, also effectiveness has always been the other axes on the chart has always been something that like people care about at security conferences, and I think that both are very important. And I think like probably at finance conferences and stuff, they're not doing that. But like I said, I don't know. But yeah, I think security does a good job with all of this. Last, which Linux distro has good vibes? None of them, because I want to print sometimes, and like good luck printing on Linux. I hear it's gotten better, but well, thank you so much, everybody.
Wasn't Mr. Johnson amazing? Please, huge round of applause.